Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Rise Up podcast. I am super pumped to be hanging out today because I got somebody really cool joining us. His name is Benjamin Posin. He is the mastermind behind Sticks and Stones, handmade jewelry based out of the good old PDX, Portland, Oregon. We're both Oregonians, so I guess I could say that. But anyway, Ben took his passion for creating beautiful, unique pieces and turned them into something absolutely amazing. His work is really, really great, and you're going to need to check it out when we're done here. He takes handcrafted jewelry that actually means something, not this mass produced stuff that we see everywhere. This is actually handmade stuff by Ben himself, and he's going to share his story, some behind the scenes, maybe some nuggets that he's learned along the way, and maybe drop some wisdom nuggets with us. So trust me, this is going to be a really great conversation. We've been having some pretty awesome time together so far. So grab a cup of coffee, make yourself comfortable, and let's dive in. Welcome, Benjamin Posin, to the Rise Up podcast.
All right. Hey,
All
thank you for
right.
having me.
So
Thank you for having me.
you bet. So let's start at the beginning, not when you were born, but this beginning of this whole thing with Sticks and Stones. How did it all begin, and what did it stand? What does it stand for today?
Well, I'll take you back to where it all began with me in my journey into the jewelry industry. Right out of high school, I got the opportunity to become an apprentice for a goldsmith. And I took that opportunity because I love working with my hands. I like being creative. And it was a way for me to do something where working with gold and platinum and silver, if you make a mistake, you can melt it back down, you can fix it. So it was a little more of a reassurance that, if I make a mistake, I can fix it. I worked for a jeweler for about 3 years, and I fell in love, and I decided to really move forward with the jewelry industry. And my dream became having my own jewelry line. And I called in sick to work one day, and I took my jewelry. A buddy of mine was
We
working
won't
in a
tell
store.
anybody.
Yeah, I think he knows now. It's been a long, long time. But I called in
Okay.
sick, and I was going to show my jewelry off to a jury to get put into a store in the DC metro area. I think they had like 3 or 4 different stores, and it was a great opportunity for me getting started in the industry. And on my drive down from Baltimore, I got rear-ended by a Mack truck, and it kind of put a halt on all of my plans. I went through physical therapy. I wasn't able to sit at the bench, and I couldn't really do much of anything. And I was like, what am I going to do here? And I remembered hearing about gemology school, and there was a GIA, the Gemological Institute of America. And I decided that this was a way for me to continue in the industry where I'm not like hunched over, sawing and working and doing all these things, filing, which is really hard on your body, sitting as a bench jeweler. And it was a way for me to continue to be in the industry while I'm recovering. So, what would have been my senior year in high school, I went out, moved to California, to Southern California, and went to gemology school. And I got my degree, and fast forward, I got an opportunity after graduating. I got the opportunity to work for a high-end jeweler in Oregon, right outside of Portland. I'd never been. I knew nobody out here, and I thought, I'm in my 20s. I'm like 22 or 23 years old. I was like, this is the time that I can do all this kind of stuff. So I moved out. And I actually worked for this high-end jeweler for about 7 years, wearing a suit and tie, doing sales, design, gemological work, appraisals, and all, everything other than being creative and making jewelry. There just left a hole in my heart and my soul. Like I yearned to like make stuff. That was where my passion came from. So I went out, I bought a jeweler's bench, and I started making jewelry in my apartment. And my best friend, we used to hang out every day, and he comes over and he's like, "Man, where have you been? Like, I don't see you anymore." And I'm like, "Well, I'm making jewelry." And he's like, "Well, I want to make jewelry." I'm like, "You don't know anything about jewelry." He's like, "Well, I've got these ideas, and like, what about wooden jewelry?" And I was like, "I've never used wood. I don't know much about the material." And he's like, "Well, we could learn. You learned how to do this." And and I was like, "Well, let's give it a try." So I made these prototypes using these designs that he had drawn up at work. And, our girlfriends at the time were like, well, they're all right. I don't know if I'd wear this, but it's kind of cool. And I took that design and I kind of refined it and made it into something a little different. And they're like,
Mhm.
well, this is actually, you're kind of onto something. So, we started like really creating some collections and some different designs, and people were really into it. And I looked at my buddy, I'm like, well, listen, man, like this has been my dream since I got out of high school, was to have my own jewelry line, and here's the opportunity. I'm down to do it, but we have to do it right. We got to start a business. We're going to do a partnership and, 50-50, and we did it. We did all the paperwork and, got our, after they came up with the name Sticks and Stones, I got it trademarked and went through all the whole thing. Years later, yeah, he just, it wasn't his dream. So I ended up buying him out. We kind of had some different partners throughout the years, and so much help and support with community and friends. I mean, there's no way I'll be where I am today without that. But yeah, I mean, that's how it all started at the end of the day, in a nutshell. And the dream is still alive with me. One man show now, just doing it by myself.
Doing it, grinding it out, making it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long road, ups and downs. It's you want to give up every other week. You're like, what the hell am I doing? And is this going to work? Is this worth it? And then you push through it, and you prove yourself that it is worth it. This is why you do it, and it's that the perseverance and that drive that really has kept it alive. Really.
Very cool. So, how would you describe the type of clients or collectors that most resonate with Sticks and Stones?
Well, I feel like my favorite clients are the ones that are individuals. They really appreciate craftsmanship and the artistry, and they see my jewelry not just as jewelry, but wearable art. That's what I'm going for, and they also want to be complimented every day. At the end of the day, they want to be seen, and that's why they wear my jewelry.
Do you think that's, kind of the wearable art side of what you do? Is that, would you feel is set you apart from other people in the jewelry or luxury jewelry space? Or what would you say sets you apart if I'm not
That's a good question. And
accurate?
yes, in a way, of that artistry, but there's so many talented jewelers that make, wearable art for sure. But I feel like it's more the materials, my choice of materials that sets me apart from others. The using the combinations of the, exotic woods and, fossil materials and stuff that you don't really see in traditional jewelry, by still incorporating, high-end materials as well, but focusing on the craftsmanship. But really, it's all about how it's made and trying to make the best jewelry I can make.
So what is your creative process? Do you, I'm really curious about this because I'm a creative individual as well. So I want to know, how do you get inspired for your pieces? Do you see something? Is it a conversation? Is it more sights, sounds? Describe to me, where does the inspiration come from?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you would know as a creative, I mean, it can come from so many different places. I mean, it could come from, sitting down, eating a meal and looking at your plate and seeing this combination of colors and textures and saying, "Oh my gosh, like I love the way that looks. How can I make something incorporate something in my jewelry like that?" But there's no checklist at all. I mean, I can remember so many times I'm working on this design that I had dreamt up one day, and I start creating it, and I reach into a drawer, and if I see this material that I've had for like years that I was waiting for a special occasion for, and I drop everything I'm doing, and it's like new project. I pick the piece up, and it's like this whole new thing just was born without even thinking about it. So, it can come at any time. There's no reason for it sometimes, I'd say.
Do you have a particular, like wood, for example, kind of wood that you love working with the most, or that you would love to work with, or, you find it's like, I don't know, just like, is there a particular kind of medium that you're like, I love working with, like koa wood, for example, or, whatever.
I mean, I do love koa wood. If you're familiar, it's one of the
Beautiful.
softest woods. I mean, I remember when I was working at the jewelry store, we carried a high-end knife maker, and I drew a lot of inspiration from that company because they made pens and they also made knives. But in the scales of their knives, and these were like five, $10,000 knives, but they would use fossilized woolly mammoth tooth and all kinds of these really interesting materials, and that was a huge inspiration of a lot of the materials I use now. But going back to your question about my favorite woods to use, I love using ebony wood just because of its versatility. It's a super dense, exotic hardwood. It's timeless, and black goes with everything. I find myself wearing white and black t-shirts all summer long if it's warm out, and then in the wintertime button down almost pretty much solely black or gray, maybe a little bit of brown in there. But I love ebony wood, and I also have started using ambonia burl wood, which is one of the finest burl woods I've ever seen. Every square inch of it has some little knot, or I mean, it's like a work of art on its own. So to be able to take this natural work of art and make another work of art out of that, it's special. It's special. And I'm blessed to be able to do it.
I know I don't want to, I'm going to ask you, but you don't have to reveal your sources, but where do you find this stuff? I mean, do you have to do a lot? Is it locally within the Portland area, or do you have to go like global to find stuff? Like, how do you source your materials?
Well, sometimes they say the journey is the best part, than better than the destination. And I do geek out on like scouring the internet for different exotic materials and trying to find the newest, something new for me, but some kind of a material that just is so interesting that I've never heard of, or I've never seen used in jewelry before. That's one of my favorite things to do. But I have one of the largest importer exporters of exotic hardwoods is in walking distance from my studio. And that's kind of how it all got started. When we first started, you know, I was pretty poor. I mean, coming out of school, paycheck to paycheck, I couldn't afford to use gold or anything. Silver was a stretch. So I started using like copper and brass and wood. Wood was an affordable material, and that was another kind of, not just that it's organic and it's natural, but it was also affordable to be able to create, you know, this art using something that I could actually buy. And so that had a large reason for it. And this company's been around for about 100 years, called Gilmer. So, I mean, I suggest anybody look it up and go to Gilmer Hardwoods in Portland, Oregon. But they would have like this free bin of scraps that they would like cut off. Furniture makers would, these small little pieces for stuff. All I need is like a little tiny block. So to me, it was like little pieces of gold that I was able to collect and use these like small little pieces for each different design, and then I've moved up and I've been able to purchase larger pieces, but I don't really need a huge piece of material to make one of my designs. So, and I really enjoy being able to have these really super unique pieces that I can use, and I don't need a lot of it. So not a lot of waste,
Yeah,
I guess, is where I'm going with that.
that's actually the next question I had for you was, okay, do you do everything one-offs, or do you create collections, like small collections? I guess it may depend on how much wood you have, or the resources you might have, but describe to me, or like, is everything one-offs or commissioned, or how do you work when creating pieces?
It's kind of all of the above in a way, because I do a lot of commissions. I find myself, my custom, I'm consistently doing custom work for my clients, and sometimes they'll bring me their materials that they found, like a rock that they went hiking for, and I'll make their wedding bands out of these, like, this stone that they found that's like super special and precious to them. We started off doing collections where it was like, we would only use these specific materials in, these rings, and cap it at that. And then, find a new material and add to it. But it gets boring. I get tired of making the same thing over and over and over again. So I'll make one thing one time usually. There are some exceptions where I'm like, this is just too badass to not make again and share with
Yeah.
other people. But I like to try and use as many different combinations so people can see what an option is. And if they want me to commission and custom make one using those specific materials, especially with rings, I can't size them. They're made out of wood, and I can't cut them and make them bigger. I can sand out a little
Yeah.
bit to make them a hair larger to fit, but there's only so much room, until there's not enough material, and that it takes away the durability of the piece, and I won't sell it if I'm not satisfied with the craftsmanship and the durability of it. So no, nowadays I really love the one-off stuff, and again, I'll make it if somebody wants me to, but I don't like to make the same thing over and over and over again.
The words of a pure artisan.
Well, we're all individuals, it's like I want people to have the one I made, and it's special
Yeah.
that way. The more of them out
Yeah.
there,
I
the
think
less special they
you and I are
become.
similar. Like you and I are similar. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it either. Like just repeat yourself over and over and over again. That would drive me nuts. So I
Yeah.
hear you. I feel you. So shifting gears a little bit, what are you seeing in the industry right now? Major shifts that are happening within the industry.
Some of the shifts I'm seeing is, the use of lab created diamonds in a lot of jewelry nowadays. I've seen that being a huge talk about, other people in the jewelry industry as being like a disruptor in the industry, for better or for worse. There's something about like having that natural, but I also love the idea of being able to create something. We create so much as human beings. Why not diamonds? Especially if we're able to make them really, really nice, high quality that more people can afford. There was a time, people couldn't afford it, so it opens the door for more people to own a really nice diamond nowadays. Another thing I'm seeing is a lot of people really are looking for more unique, less common stones in like engagement rings and such. I'm seeing a lot of that,
Hmm.
which is really fun, because traditionally it was like you have to have a diamond for an engagement ring. That is not the truth anymore. It's like I have clients that wear 2-finger rings as their wedding rings. So I feel like whatever your heart desires, that's all that matters. It's all that matters.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So can you give me an example of like a non-diamond version? Like what would be like an example of a recent one you just done that is not diamond engagement ring or wedding ring?
I'm working on a moissanite one right now. So moissanite, it's sort of a diamond simulant. It looks like a diamond, but it's not. And I know like one of her concerns was, where's this diamond coming from? She just loved how like the sparkle of that specific stone caught her eye, and you could put that next to a diamond, and some people might not be able to tell the difference, but she could. And so that's what we went with. I've seen a lot of moss agate being another really popular stone people have asked me for engagement rings. And, I do a lot of wedding bands, so I don't do as much engagement rings, but I certainly have done my share. And it's just always such an honor to be a part of somebody's journey in that such a special event in people's lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
such a big thing, what part of the business is getting the most of your attention these days? Are tariffs impacting you, sales? Is it, AI? You kind of got AI in there. Are you using AI in your business?
I guess what takes most of my time is sales, certainly takes a lot of my time. And then just trying to create new things. I'm always trying to figure out a new way to do things. I used to be stuck in this like, if it's not doesn't fit in the box of what I do, I was scared of failing and scared to do it. You
Mm.
know, and I kind of broke out of that about 5 years ago. I started taking on any job somebody asked me to do. If I thought that there was a possibility that it could be done, I would just say, yeah, I can do it. Even though I'd never done it before, I knew I could
Figure it
figure
out.
it out.
Yeah.
And it really changed a lot internally to stop being so scared of failing and doing it wrong. At the end of the day, it's like, what is wrong when you really boil it down? So, you know, really being able to break out and try stuff that I'd never thought would have been possible, you know, 6 years ago, that takes a lot of my time now, you know, just trying to figure out new things and new ways to do stuff. You know, as far as tariffs, they don't really impact me too much. You know, I mean, I can, you know, decide what I want to source. I think like my packaging might be the only thing that, you know, would be really affected by tariffs, but you know, it's
Mm.
not a huge thing. It doesn't change my business a whole lot. And then as far as AI, you know, I don't use a whole lot of AI. You know, I think the only time I do is if I'm trying to create a description, like a website description for a piece of jewelry to like as a place filler, because I've got so many things I'm doing, you know, trying to get something just to get it seen online is more important than like anything else. So having AI write the description for me that I can then go back and kind of fill in the blanks and, you know, like make this sound more
Make
like
it yours.
me,
Yeah.
I'll use that. But no, I have not embraced AI. I'm not saying that I never would, but it's not a part of my business really. And maybe it could be. Maybe it could help. I haven't, I'm trying to keep an open mind about it, but I really haven't delved into it enough to see any difference.
So, if you were to kind of cat or put a finger on it, what stage of growth are you in right now? Are you kind of in a building stage? Are you in a scaling stage, kind of a refining stage of your business?
Well, I would say that I'm always in all of those stages consistently, always trying to grow, always trying to refine. I feel like the refining stage is what I'm mostly always in because I'm always trying to be the best I can be. I have clients come to me and they're, you know, I've been wanting to get a ring from you for years and I think it's finally time. And I was like, well, this is the perfect time because I'm making the best jewelry I've ever made in my life now. You know, so I'm always trying to
Yeah.
refine and just dial it in and get better. You know, as far as scaling, you know, yeah, it'd be great to scale, but I love just being able to do what I do and put my heart and soul and do it the best I can, you know, so that is more important to me than being bigger at the end of the day.
Do you what are some of the wins or exciting business, either business wins or client stories that that you've had so far this year? Like maybe, you created something that you never thought you'd create, or I don't know, like is there anything that comes to mind of like, man, that was I'm so stoked on that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things, for sure. I mean, I think just being able to do what I do, is a win of its own. You know, I have so many friends, that are artists that, you know, aren't able to do, you know, this full time, you know, and maybe
Yeah.
it's just not taking the leap of faith in yourself, but I'm blessed. And I'd say every day that I can turn the lights on is a win 100%. As far as jewelry goes, I did have some clients bring in, you know, they were hiking and they found this like, you know, lot of Oregon opal, you know, rocks and stones. And they brought me this huge box of stones that they wanted wedding bands made out of. And, you know, I had in the past somebody send me some rocks from Montana that they wanted a wedding band. And I was like, I can do it. And you know what? I couldn't. I didn't. And it was such a shot to my heart. I was like, I tried and tried, but I was like, listen, I don't want to say, you know, like I've gone through the ones that you sent me and it didn't work, you know, and I had been pondering that for so long and finally that opportunity came again and I just had this idea. I was like, what if I did it this way? And, you know, lo and behold, I mean, I went through a bunch of different trial and error and screwed up and destroyed tons of rocks. I mean, can't even say how many hours I went through just trying to make it work, but I ended up doing it and I got it. And that was a huge win to just kind of push through that so many times, messing up, but knowing, like I knew it that I could do it and not giving up and just making it happen. And they were like, these are more amazing than I could ever have imagined. And they were just over the
Wow.
moon. So that was a huge, huge win for me to just like not give up like I did the last time and push through and do it. I even called that customer and I was like, hey, just to let you know, I know it's been a long time, but I figured it out and I could do it if you decided to go back to that one day for an anniversary gift or something. So,
You
I
didn't
put
make it
that out in
easy
the
on me,
universe.
but I figured it out.
I did. So that was a huge,
You know,
huge
I,
win.
I learned a quote a while back. It was actually from Tony Robbins. He said, and it's always stuck with me. He said, you know, he gave a story about kind of what you said, like trying to get to this thing, and it was like kept hitting a wall and whatever. And he said, you know, when you hit a wall, like either creatively or in your business or whatever that is, or even in your personal life, most people don't look hard enough. There's always a way. There's always a way. You just have to look harder. And most people just, hit a wall and they hit it a couple times and they're like, can't go over it. Whereas in your case, or what you just described, you had failures. You tried to you figured it out. You found a way to get there. Was it an easy way? No, but you found a way.
Yeah.
Right. I imagine, you pushing through that as a creative individual. That's what it takes in business sometimes, like in your craft, in the way that you figure things out, is you got to figure it out. Like you'll get there. You're going to break a lot of rocks
Yeah.
along
You're
the
going to break a
way,
lot of rocks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I have a question for you. How do your high value clients find you?
I think my highest value clients, the ones that value my work the most, come from word of mouth at the end of the day. Because I mean, I can't tell you how many stories I have from, you know, someone wearing one of my pieces at like a coffee shop and having somebody walk over from across the room and be like, what is that? Like, that's the most amazing thing. And then, like starting this conversation and creating this dialogue. And then they're like, that person's my best friend now that I made in a city I just moved to that I knew nobody, starting this new job. And like, your ring made my whole life here. Those are the stories that I love to hear. And I feel like most of my highest value clients are from those type of stories where, you're sitting on in the grocery store and somebody looks down or sees your necklace or something and is like asked you about it. And then, you start these conversations and they're like, where did you get it? And then they're like, hey, I met somebody at the grocery store who showed me your Instagram and here I am, I want one. Those are the best ones.
So outside of kind of word of mouth, what other marketing channels or strategies are working well for you right now?
Gosh, if I had a marketing strategy at all, it would be a blessing. There is absolutely no strategy. That'd be step one, is having a strategy, and
Having
then
the strategy,
implementing.
then implementing said
You
strategy.
know,
Okay.
that's one thing that I do not have. I find myself just so engulfed in everything else that that's one thing that always falls through the cracks is any kind of strategy. I kind of am like very grassroots, fly by the edge of the seat kind of thing and see how it goes. But I do love the idea. It sounds so amazing to have a marketing strategy. It's like this
So
myth that
I
I'm
have a
like
question for
always
you.
that I'm chasing the marketing strategy.
Yeah.
So
Chasing
yeah, I
said
mean,
yeah.
other than that, it's really, just, I wear my jewelry out everywhere I go and I pick up a lot of clients that way. Just people seeing me wear my stuff and people seeing other people wearing stuff has been a great strategy at the end of the day.
The non-strategy strategy.
Yeah, the non-strategy strategy, it's like the
Okay.
Tao. It's nothing is done without action. You could do nothing and yet nothing is not done. I think that's
Yes,
how
that's
it
true.
goes. But if you've read it, then you know what I'm talking about. We don't have
Yeah.
to go down that rabbit hole. But
So, other than trying to figure out a marketing strategy, what are some other areas you'd like to dial in over the next maybe 6, 12 months that you're, you know, maybe that is getting a strategy in place?
And I think that's now that you mention it, that probably would be my number one goal for the next 6 to 12 months. I just finished a whole redesign of my studio space. I have a pretty large industrial space that I've had, been in there for about 15 years. And it's undergone, major transformations, but it's never been a place to like bring people and
Yeah.
have people, like be there and want to be there. It's just been a messy workshop with stuff all over the place. And, it's my sanctuary, but it's not everybody else's sanctuary. And,
Yeah.
I used to have a retail shop downtown, and every month there was a event called First Thursday that, would have a new artist show for the entire month. We'd have a huge party, give away beer, live music, really support, other local artists and musicians and bring people together. And, once I got rid of the store, I haven't done anything in my studio since. So,
Mm.
with that in
See some
mind,
opportunity there. Yeah.
that's kind of what I've been doing is getting the space ready. I had a friend do his clothing release party at my space, and we cleaned it up, and he's like, I know you've been talking about this forever. Let this be the push you need to make it happen. And it really
What a good
was.
friend.
Oh, but it turned out I was like, oh, I'm gonna paint a wall and I'm gonna move this thing. And then that wall's painted. Now I gotta paint that wall and that wall. And it snowballed from like this is gonna be a 2 week thing to it's been like 3 months. And I just had an open studios event over this past weekend, and everybody who walked in was like, man, this is a vibe. I just want to hang out. This is an art studio. Like, I just want to hang out here and go shoot pool and have a beer. And I was like,
Yeah.
see, that's what I was going for. So it worked.
Very cool.
So that's,
All right. Well, that was going to be my next question was what's the evolution of your brand of Sticks and Stones? What did that look like? And so sounds like you've already been in that motion, new studio, new space. Anything else along that front?
yeah, well, with that, it's like the new vibe of the creativity. You sit in the same spot, and like even just painting a wall can change everything. You paint a wall in your house, or you move a plant around, or just do anything, redesign a room, and it just gives you a new like perspective on everything. And so I'm kind of in a new perspective kind of motion now in the shop and in my life and in my creative flow. I've been working more on like a higher end. I still have my entry level. And when I say entry level, it's, I use brass and copper and silver, but I've now started implementing gold, rose gold, white gold, and yellow gold into my designs, where in the past I could never have done that. I couldn't afford those materials. They've gotten so expensive. So that's kind of my next move, is being able to have some higher end options for clients, not only my entry level stuff as well.
Yeah. And what price points are I know it's going to be a range, but what's the price points that you're currently offering right
I'm right
now?
in that like, 550, 600 up into, probably like the $6,000 range, and anywhere in
Okay.
between, depending upon the materials, the gemstones, and, the kind of
Yeah. What's
artistry that's
involved with
put
it
into
and all
each
that. Okay.
piece.
Okay. So what's holding you back then from doing the higher end stuff? At least right now. Is it just
Well,
time or is
and
it
I'm starting. That's kind of where I'm
Oh, you
at.
already started. Oh, sweet.
I'm in
Cool.
that right now. And in the past, what was holding me back was the fear of
Mm,
messing it up. That investment in the materials, or what am I going to
yeah.
do with this? I buy all this materials, and I'm like, I'm scared to do anything with it because it's so expensive that I
Yeah.
just don't want to do the wrong thing. And
Yeah.
so it's really like breaking out of that mindset that, like, whatever I do is the right thing. Like, there is no wrong thing, believing in myself. And that was like, with that, like, figuring out how to do the bands, that confidence that you create for yourself is invaluable, because that's what's going to take you to the next step. So
Awesome, man. I can't wait to see those pieces as they unfold. So I'm telling you, I mean, and by the way, where is your shop? Where is it in Portland?
it's in the
What part of
Northwest
town are you?
Industrial. It's in the Northwest Industrial area,
Okay.
right outside of downtown Portland. So it's not very far. You can see there's a building. It's been around forever. It's called Montgomery Park, and you have the huge sign. And when you're going over the 405 bridge, you can see it. And I'm kind of tucked down in this industrial area that's been typically, foundry industry. But my building that I'm in, the owner put in about 70 art studios. So it's a huge creative space now, so many talented artists, and we kind of draw from each other's energy. And it's just such a uplifting, positive
That's so
place to be
cool.
for creatives. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah. Being in an environment like that it just opens you so much, like creativity, like just the juices just flow because who knows who you run into on a particular day, particular time that might spark something for you. And it's like, but if you're just siloed in your own little world, you don't get exposed to that. And so,
No.
um,
Yeah.
we'll make sure that we'll put a link to your website. We'll talk about that in a minute, so people can find you and check you out. And next time I'm in
Oh, yeah.
Portland, my sister lives in Vancouver, just across the river. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Not far
I'd
at
love
all.
I'd love to come by myself personally and check out the shop, and we could say hello and grab a beer or something.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I have a couple more questions for you. If you could wave kind of a metaphorical magic wand and fix one thing in your business, what would that be?
I would clone myself as many times as possible is what I would do if I had the magic wand.
Yeah,
Because when you're an entrepreneur, when you're kind of a one person show, you have some help, and I do have some support from people, for certain things. But at the end of the day, like, I'm the only one who can do certain things, and kind of pigeonholing myself into that position is the one thing that I would change if I had that magic wand. I would try and create myself again to be able to take on some of that stuff where, if I walk away, then nothing happens. It's at a complete standstill. So that's what
yeah.
I would do with that metaphorical magic wand. I'd
All
make
right,
more of
all
them.
right. Have you seen the movie Multiplicity? It's from like the mid '90s, I
Yes,
think.
yes.
And
I'm
it's like
not
they
very
keep getting
crystal.
dumber and dumber.
Yes, exactly.
Man.
I
Actually,
do
his second
remember
his
that.
second clone was like the best. He was like this work guy and got everything done and all this stuff. And then he ends up going like, oh yeah. Anyway, that's what I think of when I think of that.
That
I
is
derailed the conversation. My apologies.
No, I love that. And yeah, I do remember that movie. I do very
Yeah.
well, actually.
All right. So I have a question for you, kind of retrospectively looking here. If you could look back at your younger self, what would one piece of advice, business advice, life advice you would give?
It's a very good question. I would tell myself that when you are getting that feeling of giving up, which is going to happen all the time, know in your heart that that is the universe telling you that you're almost there at that next step. And if you give up, then you'll never get to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really practicing that more recently, and it's becoming more and more clear. Granted, I never did give up, and that's why I'm still doing it. But there was always that thought and that fear, and it was more fear based instead of really kind of pushing into it, instead of kind of pulling back from it. And I used to always pull back from that fear and get stressed about it. Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to pay rent. What am I going to do? And then, like clockwork, miraculously, that one sale comes through and it's the exact amount that I needed to do this, and it was like, and it's always like that consistently. And I see the pattern over and over and over again. So I think just like really embracing it and pushing into it is the advice I'd give myself, to not be scared of it, to really, really embrace it
Yeah.
and look at it as a blessing and not a curse.
Yeah. Because in a way, it's the world telling, or the universe telling you, or God telling you, however you feel from a, from that lens, that you're ready to grow, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how
Yep.
you do it. Like you have to hit that. And it's funny, or not funny. Well, maybe it's funny. Is you're not the only one that said that. Like I've had a few interviews, the last couple ones I've done, and it's the same thing of, of fear, and people of, as entrepreneurs, we have to, it goes back to, we have to find a way. Well, if you're held back, if you're fearful about like messing up, or I can't pay the rent, or, just to keep the lights on, like that is the journey of entrepreneurship, is hitting those walls, pushing through the fear, where you, if you give up, then you give up, it's over.
Yep.
But if you believe in it and you just know it, leaning into it, that is the hardest thing that I've found, is leaning into it. I push against it, but I'm not like fully leaning into it. And it's really hard to make that switch sometimes, really hard,
Yeah.
because you're just like, your mind just goes crazy. Like, what if I do this? What if I do? I call it the ifs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What if this happens, or what if that happens, or whatever. In reality, if you look back, you go, did it really happen?
Yeah.
No, it didn't. But it's kind of a fight or flight scenario. That's what fear is. And I found that when people like yourself, you push through it and you lean into it, and you like, okay, it's an opportunity here. What do I do with it? That's where those moments of breakthrough happen, creativity, inspiration, business decisions, like, but it's hard because you just, sometimes, some people, including myself sometimes, where you're just like locked in your boots, and you're just like, how do I go? Where do I go? So appreciate you sharing that. So,
Yeah.
because other people have been dealing with it too. You're not the only one.
Yeah. No. And
Okay.
imagine knowing that as the youngers. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
life would have been a
Boom.
lot
Get
less.
them
There would have been a
done.
lot less anxiety
Yeah.
in my
I
life.
know. I know. I hear you. I hear you. So I have two more questions for you. One is, what do you hope, people who are listening to this, watching this, walk away with after hearing your story? What's one thing you'd like to leave them with?
I mean, I hope people walk away inspired, inspired to follow their dreams, to push through and believe in themselves. I mean, that is what I hope people take from this conversation, is just that.
Awesome. And so last question then is there anything particular you'd like to promote or highlight or share, during this episode? Are you going to be at a particular event? You having another studio thing? Like what's going on in your world that you'd like to share with everybody?
Yeah, I'm gonna be doing some events in my studio. I'll be doing some art shows, really supporting local creatives. I'm gonna be vending at Oregon Country Fair. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Oregon Country Fair, but it's a pretty big, and huge thing out here. 20,000 people come through a day. So I'll be set up there, and my higher end jewelry line. So
Awesome.
I'll be uploading those on my website probably in the next few weeks. So keep your eye out for some of my newest creations that I really kind of stepped out of my like comfort zone and really just said, let's do it. No more sitting and waiting for the right time, because the time is
Yep.
now,
There's never
and
going to
we're
be.
never getting it back. So that's it. Yeah.
What's your website?
It's sticksandstonesjewelry.com.
Sticksandstonesjewelry.com.
Yeah, just
I'll put this.
spelled out exactly as it is. No X's or anything like that. Sticks and
All right.
Stones Jewelry.
No weird asterisks or anything weird.
Nope. Nope. Simple. Nice and simple. Like my jewelry. Clean,
There you go.
simple, refined.
Sticks and Stones Jewelry. All right. So I'll put a link, if you're listening to this, sticksandstonesjewelry.com, and I'll put a link, around this, if, wherever it's posted online, so you guys can, check out Ben's work. He does amazing work. And I am like so honored to spend time with you, man. I know that, we've had a couple conversations prior to this, and I think we're two peas in a pod in a certain way. But, I am just super proud of you, man, for all that you've been through and, where you're going with Sticks and Stones, the work that you're doing, the craft that you have. I mean, this guy is truly an artisan. So check out his work. And yeah, that's it for today. So Ben, thank you so much for the chat, for sharing some wisdom nuggets and everything that you've done. Have a great day, man, and we'll talk soon. See you.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate being on here with you. Thank you so much.